All right, so now that you have watched those couple of videos and you know a little bit about frame by frame animation and you've looked at those advanced tools, I want you to make a very simple ball bounce. And so if I were to demonstrate this for you, I would go to my ellipse tool and you would change your color here. So let's say I wanted to have an orange ball and I wanted my ball to have, I'm going to go with a blue outer circle, and I'm going to make my outer circle just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make it 2 pixels in size. And now I would draw my ball. And so when you draw this ball, make sure that you hold down your shift key because that will keep it round, right? If you let go of your shift key, you see I can make it into any kind of an ellipse, but holding shift keeps it proportional and it will be round. So make your ball. And that is frame 1. Now, rather than remaking your ball on every frame, it's much easier, of course, to copy or paste that ball. So you could go back to your cursor here and you can select your ball, or we can simply copy frames as well by using your copy. So you can use shortcut keys, Control C for copy, Control V for paste. Up here in the corner, you also have copy and paste up there. So I'm going to take that ball, I'm going to copy it, and now go to frame 2, and on frame 2 now you want to paste it. So I'm going to do a Control V. Now, once I paste it, I need to move it a little bit. So I'm going to take that ball and I'm going to move it down ever so slightly. And when you are moving your ball, just watch that if you are moving it that you're going straight down, okay? You can look at your position numbers. You can kind of line up those lines. Unfortunately, I'm finding that the shift key, which in most graphic programs keeps things aligned, doesn't seem to work here. So I'm just going to move my ball down a little bit. And now I'm going to take that ball and copy it. And I'm going to go to my next frame. And on frame number 3, I'm going to paste that ball. And now again, I'm going to move that ball down ever so slightly. And then copy that ball and go to frame 4 and paste it. And move that ball down a little bit. And go to frame 5. Oops, I forgot to copy it. I'm going to copy it from there. So I'm always copying it from my previous frame because then it's in its last position. And I'm going to go to frame 5 and I'm going to paste it and move it a little bit. Now, if you turn on the onion skinning, you will notice that you can see the position of your last ball. So if I go back through it, I can see the previous and the one next to it, and here the previous and the one next. So it always shows you one frame before, one frame after. Here, I don't have a frame after it yet, so that's why you can't see all of it. Now, I want you to keep in mind, your animation is playing at 12 frames per second, and that's a pretty standard animation speed. So when we look at this timeline down here at the bottom, 12 frames is what represents 1 second worth of time. So if I were going to have this ball move this slowly, it's going to take 1 full second, depending on whether I'm going to end up at 12, or if I want my ball to be a little bit faster than a second, you want to end up less frames. So I'm just going to keep going here, and you'll see that I take my ball, I copy it, I go to my next frame, I paste it, and I move it. And I copy it, and I go to my next frame, and I paste it, and I move it. And I copy it, and I go to my next frame, and I paste it, and I move it. And I'm going to call this animation now done. So you can take your playhead and you can scrub it. I'm going to turn off onion skinning. So you can see my ball is bouncing. And if I were to actually play this, it would loop on this play. And so you can see there's my bouncing ball. And that's how frame by frame animation works, where you have to draw every single frame. Now, saving, okay? So when you save an animation, up here in the right-hand corner, this is where you go to save, and it saves your Wick file, and you can browse to where you want it to be. And so I'm going to call this Bouncing Ball Demo and save. Now, I want to show you another thing, because you can have various projects going at once, and that is when you go over here into these settings. From there, you can also name your project. So this would be if you've got a project that you want to continue on another day, and you want to, of course, give it a name, you don't want it to just be called My Project, so you can name it here, and I would call this Bouncing Ball, and I would apply that. This is where you can also change the size of your project. You can change your background color. So if I wanted this background to not be white, I could change it to a different color. And you can change your frame rate. So if you need it to play slower or faster, you can. However, having said that, 12 frames per second, that's FPS, is pretty much the standard for animations like this. So I wouldn't play with that. Just get used to the fact that every 12 seconds when you're animating is a second worth of time. So I would apply that, then I would close it down. So I have saved it, right? It saved my Wick file. It's called Bouncing Ball. It likes to give it a time on it when it does a save. Now, if you are finished and this is the end of your project, now you need to export this project so that other people can just watch it. And so here under export, we have a few different ways. We can export as a GIF file. So very similarly to the animated GIF that you created in Photopea last week for me. We can put it out to a video file as well, where it would create an MP4 video file. And in that case, you are allowed to also add sound to it. There are other ways we can export it out as a zip. So if you had all kinds of different files, you could do that. You can also export it out for a web page, and we can export it out for images. What we want to do is we want this to be a finished animation. So we are going to export it out as an animated GIF. And so I would export that as a GIF. It is creating my bouncing ball GIF. Again, it's asking me where to save it. So I'm going to call this Bouncing Ball Done, because that's what it's actually doing, is it's my done one, and save it. And that is the one that you will now put onto your website. So if you could hand this in, we're just going to stick with that Photoshop page. Even though this isn't really Photoshop anymore, let's put it on that same Photoshop page. And that way everything is just in one spot to make it easy, since we are working online during this whole COVID school closure.